Okay, for today's session of the Power Platform Well-Architected Framework, we are going to envision and define a monitoring strategy for the Power Platform. Before I begin, I just want to say my name is Ali Yousefi. All the opinions expressed within this session are my own. They do not reflect my employer. Um, so let's go ahead and get started with this session. The overview of this session is to discover and assist with defining a monitoring strategy for the Power Platform. It's not necessarily a technical discussion. It's designed to be more strategic in nature. The intended audience includes business stakeholders, key decision makers, directors, architects, and quite frankly, anybody who is interested in implementing a monitoring strategy. So with that, you might say, hey, what is monitoring? Why do I even need a strategy? Well, at a high level, monitoring, what is it? It's ability to extract information about running processes, applications on your platform, see how they're being used, how are they performing, and looking at the evolution of your business data. How are users working with your data? How do they, want to work with it? What feedback are you getting? All of that can help be collected, and monitoring is a big piece of that. The insights collected from monitoring, quite frankly, will shape how your business plans and how it plans to operate. So having a proper monitoring strategy in place as you're planning obviously is ideal. That said, there's not a bad time to start implementing a strategy. So even if you've been working within the platform for many years, maybe you've been part of the dynamics piece and you're evolving into Power Platform, it doesn't matter. Anytime is a good time to start monitoring. In fact, I bet your organization already has some sort of monitoring policy in place, and we want to make sure that that policy does fall under the Power Platform as well. All right, so let's get into defining a monitoring strategy. So building a monitoring strategy, there's a lot here. Let's go through it one by one. So this is what I would say, that we want to first identify what questions your business needs to address with how the platform is being used. What requests do they have from you? So for instance, does your business, when it's looking at the operational teams, what kind of data do they need to help troubleshoot? For your stakeholders who want to know how the platform is being used, right? They're looking at, what license is the right license to have? What room of the house do I need to be working with? Should I invest in sales insights or omni-channel, whatever it would be? Understanding how users are moving around in your platform, right? Are they gravitating towards certain areas of the platform? What's the active usage, right? We're looking at, monthly active usage, maybe of a certain area. That'll let you know this licensing might be pertinent, right? If I see a lot of usage on the Sales Accelerator workspace, for instance, I understand that component is ideal, and that, is available with the Sales Enterprise and premium licensing and so on. Across all of the applications and your Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate flows, et cetera. Like how often is your flow running? Is it part of mission critical applications, right? So even monitoring this will help you as you look towards, throttling and so on. So does your organization have a mandate to say we can only use first party tools, only ones that have that are from Microsoft? What about third party, right? There's plenty of third party products out there, New Relic, et cetera. There's out there. They all come with, specific licensing and cost with them. What about open source? If you're going to start looking at these monitoring tools that may be third party or from the community, do you have a policy that says I have to be able to see all the code within to ensure there's nothing that's malicious, sending data to other entities, whatever it may be? Does the tool you're choosing, can it scale as your organization continues to grow, as you build more apps, as you start, creating more data, have more users join your organization? Can it scale with you? So those are all things I think your business would probably want to, understand, as well as just, helping craft some KPIs that monitoring will help, sort of identify those data points they need. It's important to identify the organizations that are used in your production or your mission critical swim lanes. So that means if you say you have a production instance, if you have a traditional dev, test, prod type setup, you want to understand, okay, these are the orgs that have it. How do I set up monitoring for each one of these so I can understand as a developer that's in the developer sandbox environments, that they're building the instrumentation within their customizations. They have the ability to to troubleshoot in a lower environment if there's needed. Monitoring how their testing are running, right? Making sure that they have a good test strategy, monitoring how they're running as we move artifacts and changes through our ALM process, making sure that we're tracking, the tests are running, how is that movement happening, and so on. How do those changes that developers are making, how do they impact the experience and performance across environments? So that part is very key to understand, what change happens and how it is sort of a domino effect, right? So catching that early, looking at monitoring, having guardrails in place for how you're going to monitor is going to be good, especially when you start talking about how to be able to quickly act on any sort of disruption, right? So having a strong strategy for adding instrumentation or logging, having the ability to collect platform logs from Power Automates that are critical to your integrations, to Power Apps as users are clicking buttons and navigating and hooking into legacy on-premise SQL servers or Dataverse or Salesforce or whatever it would be, being able to understand how they're using these platforms, looking at activity logs, looking at the Dataverse API logs, all of that stuff that will help you understand how users are working within the platform. Identifying your security requirements and how you plan to ensure compliance, right? So part of this, what monitoring helps and why you build strategy is to understand how users are connecting with your platform, right? What devices are they using? Laptops, mobile devices, IoT devices, whatever it would be. What locations are they in? Are you seeing users who potentially, traditionally say may log in the West Coast, but you're getting login requests from, Middle East or Europe or something like that, where they normally wouldn't be at. So you can use certain tools to help you understand that this may be a risky sign in, and that monitoring, generating those logs, those activity logs, are what's going to help here. Monitoring what actions users are taking, right? There's certain actions that should raise some flags, right? If I'm seeing several exporting to Excels, right? Mass deletes of data, exporting mass amounts of data. These are things I want to keep tabs on to make sure there's nothing, malicious going on here. So identifying what your security requirements are, how you're going to do this. Also, as we're looking regionally, how that's going to work. Identify who needs access to what based on their roles and responsibilities. So if they're in operations, if they're business stakeholders, InfoSec, development teams, etc. How do you plan to service those applications with your current ITSM solutions? You may already be using PagerDuty, ServiceNow, whatever. So your ops teams, need to understand how are they going to service Power Platform apps as they come on board, Dataverse solutions as they're created and pushed into production. How are those going to surface signals to your ops team that something is awry? Finally, it's important for a organization to understand what is your responsibility to monitor and what is Microsoft's responsibility. I get asked this many times. Why can't I have like IIS logs and things like this on Dataverse, for instance? Well, there's certain things that Microsoft owns as a SaaS, certain things that you will have to own as an organization, your customizations, your business logic, things you've created that are custom, or things that you are going to have to own that you're built on the platform. The platform, how it's running. Dataverse is a good part in pushing insights to you. I'll say the service communications API that we have, the message center, these days do really good at sending out alerts. I would highly recommend setting up an alert strategy. As you see above, there's a link to the alert strategy to set one up. So looking at getting alerts whenever there might be a disruption to Azure services, Azure AD, Power Plat, whatever it would be, so that you can get notified and take action in your ITSM tool, if that's ServiceNow, PagerDuty, Teams, whatever it would be. One of the big things I think as we build a strategy is always building towards the future, not just current state, but future state. So as we know, Microsoft Power Platform, very robust with many connectivity points, hundreds of connectors, ability to build your own custom connectors. You can connect hybrid, connect cross-cloud, whatever it is. And as your business furthers adoption of this platform, more services will become relevant to meet your business needs. So I want you to consider, I pulled this from the Azure Cloud Adoption Framework. I think it's pertinent for what we're doing, and I think that we should try to apply this same cloud adoption framework bullets that you see here for when we want to define our monitoring architecture. So I'm going to list each one of these in a slide. I think it'd be fun to deep dive into each one of these. So let's start with the first one, which is consolidating your monitoring investment when resources are limited. There's many tools available to monitor the Power Platform. Some require little touch. Some require a lot of touch. They're very complex. Some have little maintenance that just get updates get pushed out. Some you hold the onus of updating yourself. There's things that are community driven, center of excellence. There's ones that are third party, like we've talked about with New Relic and others. There's first party with data exports to application insights. Consider which tools will add or reduce effort when resources are limited. When you have limited amount of folks to be able to manage this, what tool makes the most sense? What tool is going to help free your folks up, right? So tools that could reduce effort that still include that robust monitoring and harness the power of machine learning. Those are ideal tools, right? That I don't have to put much effort in implementing them. They sort of turn on. Those ones I would gravitate towards, right? If I could, in a happy state. The trade-off for that at times can be the amount of data needed to train models. Um, there can be some complexity of setup depending on what tool you choose and the cost of it, right? So if you go into an agreement with another vendor, for instance, who has a monitoring solution, what's the cost of that ease of use versus something that may be community driven that you have to sort of own if there's any bugs and things like that, right? So cost isn't just the cost of the license, it's the cost of the maintenance, right? If there's a bug, who do you call, right? There's not necessarily for community a team that is going to be 24/7 with an SLA on it, where there might be for other tools. So that's a big piece of it, right? And that's something you need to consider when you're building or choosing tools. Which one of these tools actually have support behind them, right? Because if your resources are limited, that's something that can be very important to you, is to have a strong support system behind the tools you choose. Consider what data points are relevant when resources are limited, right? So do you really need to track every transaction that happens within, like, say, Dataverse, for instance, right? Dataverse, the user logs in and they navigate to go look at their sales opportunities. Every little thing they did, right? They pressed sign in. They got prompted with an app to choose. They chose Sales Hub. They presented a dashboard. They navigated to opportunities, chose their opportunity, maybe changed the view to be more pertinent to what they're looking for, clicked on an opportunity. Do you need all of that? Maybe you do. But when you're limited, sometimes you have to consider what's the cost of having all of that noise to what I really need to capture. So, thinking about what's the minimum amount of data you need to ensure that you're healthy, that you're secure, and ultimately your business has the insights it needs to make informed decisions. And the next one was to decide how monitoring will help enable the future services your business needs, right? So how does your monitoring strategy for Power Platform, how does it increase visibility into what your business needs to ensure efficient and optimal workloads, that your business has a clear picture of what services they would potentially need to either improve efficiency, and that efficiency could be anything from I need to scale out to the cloud, for instance, or it could be I need to find tools that will make my sellers more productive, like Sales Copilot, for instance. So consider how you plan to address that, right? So, and another thing could be capacity constraints, service protection limits, operational health. Those are all sort of things that are part and parcel with having a optimal platform, right? We want to have a continuous effort for a platform excellence, right? So these are all key. Is my capacity? Am I getting near the threshold? If so, how do I plan to address it? Service protection limits. Am I monitoring for throttling? Operational health. Am I monitoring to know when a service goes down? Is it what's its availability look like, right? So how do I know that it's meeting the SLAs and meeting my business needs? Platforms and tools that you choose for that must provide robust alerting and should provide you automation to ensure your business can continue. You have to have alerting in your whatever system you choose. It needs to be able to be configurable, or at least be able to look at your data and tell you that something is up. So you're getting close to capacity. You're being throttled. You're unhealthy. And having automation is definitely, I would say, a must have, but definitely at least a nice to have where you can do certain things. The capacity is it get some more get an add-on, reduce pressure somewhere. For service protection limits, is it to offload and start load balancing it into another area that is maybe not throttled? For operational health, is it to move data over to a replica, for instance? It's in a different geo, for instance, there. So consider how you share your telemetry and how you secure the access to that. Visibility into metrics is key when you're understanding your business needs. So I've seen at times when we see telemetry that's baked within, say, Azure, um, it's a little cumbersome if you're not used to being within Azure to write these queries and understand what it is. So one thing we try to do is build dashboards that really like highlight the data our business is looking for, right? Make sure your logs, understand if they're behind licensed software. I mean, if someone needs access to that log, are you going to have a license to review that, right? So that's something that's important. Does that tool align with what your organization model is, right? So do you already have a BI in place? You use Power BI, use Tableau, whatever it would be. Can can that tool ingest the data from your monitoring strategy, the logs for your monitoring strategy, so that you have a single pane of glass for both monitoring and maybe other workloads that are happening. In fact, you're probably already monitoring in other facets of your organization. So there's probably already some BI tools for that. So I definitely would look at that. And the beauty of some of these tools that we have for Power Platform is that there is an architectural design that could push those logs right into the same ones you have now. So depending on what you have, there's probably still a door that we can open to get that consolidation. As we talked about, right, future services and resources, right? So we talked about not only uh, having understanding what our business needs are. We also just talked about having services that other organizations are using within your group or other groups. But think about the future services, right? So this Power Platform is constantly evolving. Data, business solutions are widely available, growing in number. There's ISVs who are bringing out solutions every day. Consider as you advance your usage of the Power Platform, what services you may require and how that telemetry generated from your Dataverse, from your Power Apps, from your Power Automate flows, how all of that will assist with the choices you make, with the connections you create, with where your data resides. Are you able to understand with the Power Apps how your users are using it? Is it meeting their needs? Are the flows connecting in the proper way? Are the connections failing? Are the connections being, we talked about throttled. Is there any sort of pinholes? All of this stuff is monitoring can help with that. And you'll need to understand, and plan for everything you're building is providing you those logs. So, as we think about this, think about too, how are you monitoring those transactions that are made within the Dataverse API and the other connectors? Remember, we just talked about, when you're limited in resources, understanding what your business needs are. Maybe you don't need every single transaction that happens like within a single transaction, right? A transaction can have many dependencies, many different things that happen within a single operation, right? I click a button, there's all sorts of things that happen underneath, and then that, something in action actually happens. What do I need to understand that I can monitor for health and that I can do it when resources are constrained? So how does my business solution, scale under increased pressure? That's where monitoring strategy will help us. We have to, plan for being able to understand how the business will scale while resources are limited, while we need to think about cost, while we need to think about other services and how we're going to be able to have this sort of interconnectivity between multiple clouds and even hybrid. So ensuring the monitoring tools you choose for the Power Platform will provide an opportunity for end-to-end monitoring across services that you onboard. Telemetry correlation and extraction is definitely a major player here. The tools you choose must follow industry standards. So we hear about open telemetry API, things like that. Just remember that we need to be able to say an event happened and it may have connected to my server in my in my data center? Am I connected in Azure? Am I connected in AWS? How can I bring all that together? So think about it as your strategy, how to sort of combine all of that so that I can see that full end-to-end process. And as we talk about end-to-end, that's where you need to start thinking about what our monitoring sort of model is going to look like. That's where service visibility is the goal. And as we get, more complex, as we talk about crossing boundaries, it gets trickier, but that's where we, try to understand, where are we going to focus when we look at these three dimensions, right? So let's look at it. So depth is, are you collecting signals that are meaningful, or are they just simply just noisy, right? So how are the depth that you're seeing, is it truly something that you could take action on? For the breadth, are you monitoring every layer of your customizations and your solutions, right? Remember, there's stuff that you have to own and Microsoft have to own. Can you monitor each one of these, the layers that you've customized? And then for the health monitors, it's sort of across the board. Are you monitoring your availability of the services you're using, the performance of them, the security piece of it, and how are they going to be able to, recover if there's any sort of disaster, right? So thinking about the financial cost, right? So organizations, most of the time, they'll have existing commitments on other platforms outside of Power Platform. You may already have an agreement with a certain OMS or whatever it may be. Considering those existing commitments, knowledge and expertise is needed as you identify tools to monitor Dataverse and Power Platform. So having a team that already has expertise in this has already been building. You already have implementation of, say, ServiceNow, right? You have an ops team that is already using that, has vast knowledge of it. Your monitoring strategy should take that into account and build towards it, right? So there's tools that will be able to seamlessly integrate with that. There's tools that will be able to alert, within Teams, right? Maybe you don't have this and you're looking for something. Well, we all know Teams is something that most of folks who are using Power Platform probably already have access to. Maybe look at how your monitoring strategy is going to use the tools that are already part of the license you have. So that's things like Teams. Power Apps can be designed that can send notifications, right? Power Automates can send notifications, emails, whatever, to you. You can be included inside of your licensing, right? But ask yourself: do you have a SCOM in place? Does the IT and Ops team already understand the platform and the tools you've chosen to monitor Dataverse and the Power Platform? And consider the tools that provide cost flexibility without reducing business value. So, what tools can you decide, hey, I want to be able to ingest this much data, that much data without reducing the value. But if I'm going to reduce data, then I want that cost to reflect that, right? Can I reduce noisy telemetry while reducing cost? If I'm paying the same and I'm getting less, you need to consider that, right? How will the reduction impact existing processes? So if I have BI tools, visualizations, and workbooks built already, if I start reducing telemetry, is that going to break anything? Am I going to start losing those key insights that I had before? If I start tracking month over month or year after year metrics, and if I decide, okay, I have to reduce cost, I probably want to continue seeing that because that's telling me how the rhythm of my business is going. So how do I, continuously keep those metrics running and accurate while choosing to try to reduce cost? That's definitely a piece of the monitoring strategy we'll need to consider. And then think about the hybrid decisions finally, right? We're talking cloud and on-prem, right? While a vast majority of organizations have moved on cloud, there's still on-prem resources that we need to consider. They could be robotic processes, IoT, legacy APIs, gateways. Make sure any of these platforms and tools you use to connect on-prem provide telemetry that you can correlate with your Power Platform monitoring tooling. Logging of the request that happens into your on-prem resources, as well as the identifiers that it can sort of bring in that end-to-end transaction, and the ability, again, consolidate to a centralized area is key here. So now we've talked about the future state. We went through each one of the bullets. Let's quickly define impact and how to address. This is pulled from the Cloud Adoption Framework. So we have SEV 3s to SEV 0 criticals, right? So depending on your priority, you need to identify, how do you plan to alert your ops team and what tools will you use? So if it's a SEV 0, can the tool accurately, notify the right people? Does it have those automation hooks? Does it, if it's informational, Does it have the ability to, to be there on a report or something, right? But maybe not notify everyone. Like, can your monitoring tool sort of scale with the urgency of the impact, right, that's happening? So make sure as you're building the strategy, you understand for each one of these things, each one of these apps, each one of these particular requirements I have, what's the severity of those if something happens to them? If I'm collecting metrics on how a user is using a certain app, and I suddenly are losing those, or if I have the logs but I see that things are breaking, what severity level is that? Who do I need to engage, right? Understanding not only where it's coming from, but the urgency to align to the right resources that are the subject matter experts in that area that they can quickly remediate it for you. Privacy and security. So by nature, the Power Platform telemetry out of the box does not include PII. That said, developers could potentially add PII through instrumentation, right? They can add, names, emails, all sorts of stuff, right? They could say who this person is. Data analysts could potentially combine Dataverse, for instance, telemetry, which doesn't have this stuff, but it does have things like system user IDs. You can call the REST API and align with someone's full name or email address, right? And if you had this, you could potentially be showing PII, right? So understanding how to keep those separate so that you're not in a spot where that could be a problem. Because what would happen is, there's regional privacy laws that can be quite complex, and understanding that certain areas of the world have these different laws on what you can do with PII and OII. So make sure you understand, as you're a global organization, how your operational logging looks, what's being delivered out of the box, and ensuring that your developers and your teams aren't including things that could potentially get you in a sticky situation, right? So access to tools and platforms, right? Who needs to have access to these, right? So based on your role and responsibility, some resources may require temporary access to something, like a support user might need this. Does that tool that you're choosing, does it provide a quick, easy way of giving someone temp access, or adding additional, security or privileges to access it when needed? So a proper log store should also provide governance. It should tell you when someone's actually accessing the logs, right? So that you can get alerted that maybe someone is accessing it that shouldn't, and be able to quickly revoke that access. So I've gone through quite a bit here. I'm actually going to go into an example. Let's go take a look at this. So an example is Contoso Coffee, right? The greatest coffee maker in the world. So Contoso Coffee is the global organization within Power Platform and Dataverse, right? So they have users worldwide using Dataverse, leveraging multiple solution areas, right? So they have sellers that sell their coffee and coffee makers, who use Dynamics 365 sales to find new revenue streams and strengthen relationships that they have. They have third-party ISVs used, right, the different solutions used to help assist sellers managing opportunities, maybe helping them with their building out opportunity line items, or forecasting pipelines for managers and things like that. Their operations teams uses both Dynamics 365 customer service for customer-facing tickets and ServiceNow for managing tickets. The customer service is for the customer-facing, while ServiceNow might be for internal tickets, platform health, etc. Contoso Coffee has internal APIs that reside on-premise, so they're hybrid. They connect to these via Azure, whatever it might be, API management, gateways, etc. And they actually write back into their Dataverse database. They use Power Apps and Power Automate flows. They're developed by both citizens and professional developers. They require a consistent monitoring platform across all pillars of the Power Platform: Dataverse, Power Automate, Power Apps, virtual agents, etc. Contoso Coffee, due to the economy is running a tight ship, resources are stretched thin. They have a need to leverage machine learning and other tools that can help them free up their resources from having to spend a lot of time digging through a mountain of telemetry. This, I think, should resonate with majority of you in some way, shape, or form. So we'll take this as an example. We'll go back to our our bullets that we had talked through, and let's see if we can help out Contoso Coffee. So we talked about consolidating your monitoring investment resources are limited. So some of the tools that can add or reduce effort, right? So we want to make sure that Contoso doesn't have to have much maintenance, right? So we're going to be looking towards tools that are provided probably first party or third party that can also help us with having a nice support system behind it. So traditionally, first party for Microsoft will be Azure Application Insights. So that would mean that for Dataverse, turning on the data export to Application Insights, which will get you Dataverse telemetry, will get you Power Automate telemetry, and some solution area telemetry, depending on which solution you're using. For Power Apps, it also has the ability to add instrumentation into that. So Azure Application Insights is a very quick way to have monitoring set up. And the beauty of it is now you're in Azure. That solution using log analytics and app insights is what pretty much every resource in Azure uses. So now Power Platform is going to be aligned with your other Azure resources. Third party include other ones that would have support behind them. So those are ones that we would probably for Contoso, want to look at aligning with. That'll help free up our resources for other areas. How they want to decide how they're going to enable future services for their business needs. So how they want to address capacity. So again, they'll want to have something that can, monitor their capacity regularly and just alert them, right? Maybe write an email when they're getting close. Oh, you're getting, towards a certain threshold, 80%, something like that. So in this case, they have ability of connecting to APIs that can tell them, oh, it looks like this environment has this much data in it, or has this much logs in it or files in it. Maybe reduce this. So we'll have a link here that will show us how to build a report that will be sort of a digest that can be daily, weekly, etc. And that will help us with, just understanding where we may need to sort of turn the release valve off the pressure, right? And try to figure out a way of doing that. So that's going to be important, right? So aligning with their future services. So Contoso knows that, they have to stay competitive within the, the highly competitive coffee, coffee ecosphere with everybody coming with new different makers. So understanding how they can monitor how their users are working, right? So are there sellers, closing opportunities? Do the sellers have all the tools they need? Are there certain areas that they're gravitating towards? For customer service, is there, time to resolution? Are the customers happy, right? Is CSAT high? If it's not, is there something they can do? Is there some automation they can do? Is there some sort of copilot? Well, collecting all of that, collecting CSAT, that's all monitoring really. And you need to be able to understand, like, what's my plan to collect CSAT, to collect time to resolution when a case was open to the time it was closed? Why did it take so long? Is there any improvements that could be had? Is there anything? And monitoring will help you with that. Identifying monitoring gaps across the three dimensions. Well, we know that we want to, we talk about the cross part first, sorry. Think about that you're going to have to worry about availability, security, so on. What tools are going to help us here? So availability test, or quite a few solutions have that. App Insights, for instance, has it, where you can run something on a schedule and let you know that it's up and running. So ping test, running specific, maybe like UI automation test, but Playwright, different tools to help you ensure that things are available. Security, making sure we're doing robust auditing. So Microsoft Purview is a good solution. The Sentinel solution is a good one, or any sort of SIEM tool you might have would be good. I would say at this point, when you talk about the breadth of it, just understand that what can you control, right? So, I need to understand if I'm getting throttled, if something is failing. So maybe looking at fine-tuning the data points. And one of the things that we're going to talk about on future sessions is how to sort of optimize the data that's being delivered from these apps and from Dataverse, because that'll help with reducing noise and will help reducing cost. So it's really going to be a win-win. So again, that actually goes to the next one for the financial aspects and cost. So finding something that we can control better. So how can I still ingest the data points I need. So in this case for Contoso, we know they use Dataverse. We would set up the data export to App Insights. We would then look at doing things like data collection rules. We would start looking at doing things like exporting to long-term storage like Azure storage and only keeping the App Insights as sort of a like a warm path, if you will, maybe collecting for 30 days, maybe putting things like daily caps or sampling on so that we can try to reduce the cost that's there. And then finally with the hybrid, right? So they have these legacy APIs. Maybe they're using gateways. Well, gateways provide logs. How can I get those logs back up? So finding a solution that will export log. Maybe these logs are written as files on a server. Find a way to connect. What's interesting is there's solutions with Power Automate, for instance, that you can just drop into, say, a drop folder and have those logs get propagated into Azure, turned into actual logs if you want, or you can use tools like Power BI and so on to just visualize, build dashboards off of those logs you have. So I think with Contoso, with everything they have there, it looks like we can leverage the power of Azure. You can leverage the power of Power Platform by using Power Automate to move logs back into the cloud if they're hybrid. We can use Power BI to visualize the data that's being collected. We can ensure that we're having availability with the things like App Insights. We can even start looking at future services by running load testing with Azure load testing and monitoring how the platform is, how stable is it, will it scale. And then really for looking at how our users are using it, I would start looking at building dashboards outside of Azure within Power BI that can show KPIs, right? We can do that, couple it with, say, Azure Synapse Link or Microsoft Fabric to start better understanding how our data is being used and what our business needs will be going forward. So the next steps, right? This is a high level. This is more of a strategy of how you're going to be able to define it. So follow this series for up-to-date information on strategy, tooling, and other useful insights. I'm going to have a link to a strategy document that'll have each one of these points we called out, as well as those questions I had there. I think it's important to fill that out to understand, where there might be gaps and define what tools will help bridge those gaps. If you have Microsoft Unified support, please reach out to your Microsoft representative for hands-on help here. If you don't, reach out in the comments below. Let me know what's worked for you, what questions you have. If something didn't work, if something I may have missed, that's okay. Give me any feedback you have. I value all of it, and I'd like to continue any of these conversations and help you with your strategy. So please do not hesitate to subscribe, leave feedback, and stay in touch. Thank you so much. I look forward to further working with you on building a monitoring strategy for the Power Platform. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.